Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Neumaier, film critic for WOR Radio. And let's have another huge, huge round of applause, please, for Love Antosha. Such a special film about a special person. And it is my honor to introduce director and editor Garret Price, producer Drake Doremus, casting director A.V. Kaufman, Thanks so much. And it is my very, very special honor and pleasure to introduce Anton's parents, Irina, Korina, and Viktor Yelchin. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here. It is such a pleasure and an honor to sit here with you and talk about this amazing film, this amazing person, and how special Anton's work in life continues to move us. Irina, we must, of course, start with you. I think Anton would have it no other way. His acting was so memorable and so special, but as we see through the film, his artistic expression took so many forms: his writing, his music, his photography. I'm curious if there was a point when Anton was young that you could have seen him go in any of those directions, but you recognized the moment where he pivoted towards acting, that acting really became the passion for him.
He began with commercials and then did a couple, and then he said to me that he doesn't like it because it's no acting. And then I said, that's great, then we're just gonna stop that. I was happy that he didn't fall in love with it, because I've read a lot of things about in the stupid magazines, like by Ralph's, on the shelf, that stories and things, and I just didn't feel like I want him to do this, and I was afraid that he would be one of just mediocre actors, and so I was happy that he didn't like it. But then he said, I want to do films. And then, we talked about it, and then he started acting class. And then he was cast in the first role, like Hearts in Atlantis, a big film. He'd done Delivering Mila, he did Men Mostly Water, but he was loving it. And that's the first time when he said, that's what I wanted to do. And then so he did, when he did Hearts in Atlantis, and because he was so cute, I thought maybe that's because of that he's getting the parts. And then when he did Hearts in Atlantis, Sir Anthony Hopkins told me that he is extremely gifted. He has this something inside of him. He's so gifted that he almost knows what he's doing. And that's when I believe that I came home from that set, and I told Viktor that I guess he was born to be an actor.
Yeah.
That's how it happened.
Yeah. And Viktor, did he always love stories? We see some of the amazing footage from when he was young, as a young boy, but did he always have that gravitation towards stories, or like a narrative intelligence almost in some ways, wanting to kind of convey things through the telling of stories?
Yeah, he was storyteller, his own story. Sorry. Unfortunately, it's not in the movie, but when he was really young, like probably 5, 6 years old, he wrote a lot of stories. And we have it, and it's funny, it's touching, but he already started to do some creative work. So when it's continuing his career as an actor, and we saw that, yeah, it was from the very young age.
And on set of Hearts in Atlantis, sorry, I just want to add something. Scott Hicks, the director of Hearts in Atlantis, he sent the stories to Stephen King. And then we have a book at home, and Stephen King gave him the script and a cover, and he wrote to Anton, keep writing, Anton, you're great in it.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And just one last question on when he was young, which is we see in the film that he was sort of an autodidact. He obviously taught himself so many things. Is that something that the two of you are like with your art? Was that something that you noticed in him early on, that he just, acclimated to himself? I know that your brother Viktor is also he went to USC. He's a creative person as well. The creativity was flowing. Was that willing to kind of teach himself things always there from the beginning?
No, we never taught him anything. Actually, it's not in our power to teach him that one. We now other field completely. But he was very creative from the very early age, because I remember our first house, we had a garage full of the toys, and most of the toys was Lego and I believe Duplo. And it's very, very creative toys. He always did something. He always created something, story. And sometimes I just was staying outside of the garage and watching. He did the story. He not just connect these pieces, but it was some stories about whatever it is. So probably
And Turtle Ninjas, he played for each Turtle Ninja.
yeah, Ninja
Yeah,
Turtles.
had
It was
big
favorite.
figures, and he was speaking with different voices for each of them. He
So I wouldn't say that we taught him something, but whatever he did, we tried to support.
Yeah.
Whatever he liked.
Yeah, I just love that you showed him Taxi Driver probably before he was 10 years old, which I feel like if anyone would appreciate that, I feel like Anton would have.
Yeah, but it feels like he can understand
Yeah.
it. Plus, it was when he was probably maybe 11. They were obsessed with Kubrick, especially like Clockwork Orange. It was like you could see the accent he does in some little piece in the movie. It was like obsession, and then he started work all Kubrick, starting from the very beginning to the very end.
Garret, you do such a beautiful job of showing Anton's love of art and expressions throughout his life. I'm wondering if there was something that really surprised you through any of the amazing footage that you found, or just any of the research that you did.
I was surprised around every corner. I didn't have the, I wasn't fortunate enough to know Anton until this project. And I think it's the only way I could have made this project. To Drake's credit, he brought me in. He convinced the Yelchins when they initially reached out to Drake to make this movie possibly. And we're exploring this idea of a documentary. He really convinced them you needed an objective eye to bring in, and someone to really give Anton's story justice and really explore who he was. He was such an authentic, real person, and it was fair to his story to tell it from someone that didn't know him, and they could really explore. So he wanted to be a part of it, so he came on in the producing role, and we mixed it up a little bit, like in the spirit of Anton, as we call it. And as I was starting to really just dig through all the interviews we got and all the footage, there were surprises around every corner, like I said. So I wanted to unfold Anton's story the way I was learning about Anton during this process. It was in a linear fashion, and I was just shocked at every person he impacted, things he was doing. The very first piece of footage I saw was him getting drunk for Alpha Dog. And I was like, this is a coming of age story. This person went through all these life experiences we all go through, but for the love of movies and acting. And his first kiss was for a role, drinking the first time, and that's what I really fell in love with. And he was such a layered person, and I knew this was a story that needed to be told that not only people in this world could relate to, but everybody could relate to. There's themes here we could all, explore and be part of. Like, it's an immigrant story, it's a coming of age story, and there's so many different layers to it. And that's what, I fell in love with it. It's had a profound effect on me as a parent myself now. So I keep going, but what's been so amazing now, I think, is as we start to open this up to the world and people are watching it, not only are you learning about Anton, but it's a very self-reflective experience. And you start really questioning, are you doing enough with your life? And you just want to keep pushing yourself and exploring and taking risk and making and creating. And if anything, call your parents, call your children. And that's been pretty amazing.
We were just talking outside just before we came in about how just when you think about Anton, you kind of think about, this is a great way to approach this day, or how much more creativity can I throw into this activity that I'm going on, and that kind of inspiration is absolutely there. Yeah, Drake, let's talk about the bringing Anton into Like Crazy, which is a fantastic film, by the way, so phenomenal, and the naturalism of it. We'll kind of go backwards in a couple of moments, but to talk about all of that emotionalism and intellectualism that he was as a person, to bring it to that project where it was improv, it was all improvised over essentially a 50-page scriptment that you had, and watching him go to it. What was that like to watch him kind of blossom into that character?
I mean, it was a profound experience. He was 21 years old, and he had knowledge of relationships of somebody that would be in their 50s or 60s. I mean, he understood heartbreak. He understood love in a way that was not of most 21-year-olds. So, and Felicity was 27, so it seemed like he was older than her in a lot of ways, which was very strange. But, I mean, he was an incredible listener and an incredible preparer, which made him such a great improviser. You know, those two combined made him so good at the form. But man, I mean, yeah, it was just it was the right place, the right time. Very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Avi, speaking of right place, right time, let's talk about what you saw in Anton that obviously made you choose him as the only person that David Duchovny could choose for House of D, and for a very tricky role. Like, that role there's a lot going on, that emotionalism and intellectualism that we're talking about with Anton. That's all there in that role, and it has to be sort of very subtle and nuanced and also funny and entertaining. What was it about him that made you put him in your filing cabinet in your head and say, this is the guy?
Well, while I was watching this brilliant documentary, just brilliant, I realized that he never read. We worked on House of D, The Beaver, and Green Room, and he never auditioned for any of them. And I don't always. There aren't directors that trust me so much that they'll just say yes to people I suggest. And that happened, which is kind of crazy. You know that. I mean, it's crazy. I don't remember. It must have been Hearts of Atlantis. It must have been Hearts of Atlantis. I must have seen that, and then just told David. And I don't know if y'all have seen that movie, but Anton is brilliant with Erykah Badu and Robin Williams, and Anton carries himself in that movie. He's just
Delivering Milo.
Oh, it was Delivering Milo.
Delivering Milo. Yeah.
When I met him, he's this.
Yeah.
He's an extraordinary soul that you brought to life. I mean, he's just an extraordinary.
Yeah, the House of D there's something about that character which it feels very much like what you learn about Anton in this film. There's a watchfulness and a thoughtfulness going on, but there's also the always ready to play aspect, the always ready to be playful, and to find the fun in things, and that role really has it. But it's even there in small parts. There's a in Hearts in Atlantis, after the scene that you include Garret in here, he raises his eyebrow at a certain moment in Hearts in Atlantis, after he's having that conversation with Anthony Hopkins about the kiss, and he kind of just does this little eyebrow thing that immediately clues you into what this kid is thinking, right? And I'm sure, like, as the film was coming together, you probably saw so many moments of watching that in real life, in real time in some ways with this footage, right?
I mean, absolutely. And I think just a testament is the people we interviewed talking about his act. I mean, he was teaching them things, and that's what I found just so amazing, you know? Yeah. I mean, if you look at the people he was acting against his whole life from a young child, you know, I can't name another person who's been the opposite of so many incredible actors, and I mean, it just says everything about it, about him as someone to work off of and be there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Drake, one of the things that you mentioned in the film that really sticks with me is that he had such a radar for energy, for people's energy, for the energy around him. And at another time, somebody mentions that he's such an observer of people and a lover of stories. And I'm interested in how, when he was on a set, especially with just a two-person scene with him and Felicity, how that energy sort of manifests itself. It must have been both telescoped and also maybe even kind of broadening out in some ways when you've got that kind of intensity going on in scenes. Is that correct, or what was it like?
Yeah, I
watching
mean,
that?
I think, I mean, as you guys all know, I mean, it's so interesting to think about certain actors that have an ear for frequencies that other people don't have, and you can see it on screen, you can see it in their eyes, you can just feel it, and that's what he had that was so special. It's like he could hear things and see things differently, so his perception of things made him different in the scenes, which is so special. And it was just, he was so present. He was only reacting to everything that was going on around him. He wanted to be so present, so he was so curious about what PAs were doing, gaffers, DP, everybody. He felt like a patch in a quilt, and he just wanted to be that. He didn't want things to be about him, and that's what made his performances so special. And that's what made a lot of the performances opposite him so special. I mean, there's so many amazing people that he worked with that were so much better because of him.
And also, he put the work into it. I mean, if you look at his preparation, I mean, it's unmatchable.
He was able to be present because of his preparation, I feel like.
Yeah, you can see that in obviously his script notes, everything he's got in the margins there, right?
It was
he would write
page after page.
novels.
The whole script was like that. I mean, I'm just showing pages of
His
that.
backstory preparation specifically. I mean, he would write pages and pages about stories and experiences that his characters had that informed everything that was going on in the movie. I mean, he thought about everything.
Wow, and obviously on set, but off camera, he also was he had an encyclopedic knowledge of films, deep films. We see it in the footage where he's talking about. He knows, Victor is mentioning that he knows the Russian films of the 20s. He knows silent films. It was
My Criterion collection grew 10 times after starting to work on this. I was like, what am I doing?
Right. And Drake, were conversations like that on set with him, like, where he would maybe say, you know what, did you ever see this or that, and then it would spin off into something else?
Yeah, I mean, he made me want to be just better.
Yeah.
Because he knew more than me. He's 21 years old. I was 27. I mean, he knew everything. He knew about lenses. He knew about everything. He was so curious.
Yeah. I read something that, Garret, you mentioned that it was in all the B-roll, or a lot of the B-roll that you found, Anton was always there sort of watching, being aware of things, watching the DP with the director, right?
Always there.
Yeah.
Always observing. Never went back to his trailer. Wanted to be a piece. I mean, I think Langella said he wanted to be a piece of it all. And that sums him up perfectly.
Insatiable curiosity. I'm going to take a couple,
That's the thing. And I think everything was leading up to his chance to direct a film. And that's something that, I think, it was all just the beginning.
It's almost like every role he played was just research for his first feature, essentially.
Yeah. And just as a note, some of the films of like 2014, 15 that released 16, 17, like Porto, they're really interesting, sort of European style things, really terrific work, and things that, I mean, he was great in Star Trek, great in so many things, but those are really films also to seek out as well, because you really feel him as an artist finding these nuances and these crevices to these characters. Really phenomenal. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree.
Yeah. Got a couple of questions from folks and a couple of comments, and I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions. So definitely raise a hand in a second. The first one is a question for Avi, and what were some of the challenges that you faced, I guess, in casting? I guess probably just House of D, but maybe we can open that up even a little bit, and maybe ask when you have an actor like Anton, are you always sort of, or would you be sort of thinking about him in a sense for a role, even if you hadn't maybe seen him, or there was not necessarily a role that was up, but you kind of always had him in the back of your mind? What were some of the challenges for casting something like House of D, for looking at that role? Was there something that he met those challenges?
He had to keep up with Robin Williams.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the bar's here.
Yeah,
I did not have a doubt.
yeah.
And I remember having the conversations with David and asking the same things, and I wasn't articulate.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, well, I know he can check that and that. It was just, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And David met him, and I think he might have gone to Robin's house for a read-through. And I remember...
Just to meet Zelda.
And Zelda. And Zelda came
was
down.
cast.
Right.
And Zelda, yeah.
And Robin, I remember, took the phone from David, and it was like, who is this kid?
And by that time, he had already been against Hope Davis and Albert Finney and so
I
many.
don't know if all the
Anthony
movies
Hopkins.
had come out yet,
Okay, yeah,
but
yeah.
Anthony Hopkins. I mean.
May I say one thing? It's
Absolutely.
not your question. It's just like in my head right now. It's very symbolic that we in the building, which is named by Robin Williams, and I think that Anton and Robin watching us right now, and Robin makes his wonderful jokes, and Anton's laughing.
Yeah. This is a question from Tess. She just says, aside from keeping Anton's memory alive, which is so important, what would you most want audiences to take away or remember most about Anton? I guess it could be for everyone.
I mean,
start with,
listen, this is a movie about life. It's not a movie about a death. I mean, it's truly an inspiring experience, I think, especially for all you guys. You know what I mean? It just shows you put the hard work in, what it can lead to. And like, again, I mean, everyone keeps coming up and talking about how inspired they feel after this. And I think that's something I didn't know going into this, I thought I was telling a story about a life, but now the reaction has just been this incredible, thing. And I think that's what Anton would be most proud about. This. He would hate the fact that a movie got made about him because he was so humble, but knowing the reaction it's getting and how it's making people feel, I mean, that's...
And he would also be really proud of the fact that the movie is about process, and it's about the failures and the demons and the ups and the downs in the industry, and the one for them, one for me, and what you do and what means anything. I mean, it's the truth, and that's what it is, whether you're an actor or a director or a writer, anything. I mean, it's going to be that process, so you might as well embrace it and take risks and do things that are scary in the way that he did, because I think that's the journey, and that's what's so special about him in the film.
Yeah. And really, yeah.
I just said that Anton, the best part of this film, what he would love, watching these movies which he watched all of his life, all of the clips from classics. He probably would love that, and he probably would be very, kind of like shy about the film. But I know that this film, which Garret made, reached Anton heights. So we're very lucky to have Garret directed this film.
Yeah. Let's have a round of applause, please, for Garret Price and the amazing work that he did.
I have to just say one thing, because I've worked with a lot of child actors, and watching and knowing that he was always, we said humble, but he stayed a magnificent person. From we unfortunately we can't say that a lot.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything that you want to just add, throw up a hand. I'll make sure that I repeat the question back to the audience if anyone has a question. Don't in the back. Yes, right there in the white shirt.
I just want to say that I was so moved by the love that this person received from his parents and the love he gave back. That is why he is still with you, because you gave him this gift and he is giving it back. He'll never leave you because you have that love. That love, that unconditional love is never, you see that so rarely in life. And that was the beauty of this movie for me.
Yeah. Talking about in fact, the love that you speak about, that he got from his parents and that they gave to him and he gives back to them, you can really feel that in his performances. You can feel him wanting to examine the human experience because he was so nurtured and so loved and so at home with his family. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would go home every day from the editing bay, look at my kids, and be like, why don't you treat me the way Anton treated his parents? What am I doing wrong? It's hard not to.
There were a few more hands. I want to make sure I get everybody. Right there.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for coming. I heard about him, but I don't really know much until I saw this movie. I had no idea, and I have a lot of homework to do. But the first thing is, I want to ask, you left the Soviet Union, and there's a little bit of talking about anti-Semitism on the rise. When you guys came to the country, did Anton or yourselves ever face feelings of otherness, and how did you deal with that? Because I know this movie kind of talks about that, but then it goes into this whole point of love, which is so wonderful. But were there any of those challenges that he faced in the industry, or being a foreigner in growing up in this country that we may not have gotten from the film?
The question is about the challenges that the family faced after they came from the Soviet Union to the United States in 1989.
Challenges? No. We were happy to be here. And we came in mid of September, and our first job was in the end of October. So we already, like, let's say in November, we already were on our feet and had like pretty good food on our table. And Anton never felt anything that he is foreigner in this country. I remember our first house, he started to be very friendly with our neighbors, and they actually teach him English because at home we spoke Russian. And then, no, he felt that it's his country.
I only want to add something that from that time, because we worked very hard and we did shows, and Anton was always with us from 7 months old. We traveled together, and he stayed in a dressing room with a policeman behind, like security guy, while we did the shows. And he just learned that you must work, and you must work hard. And sometimes he would ask us, why guys you leaving? Why you going to work again? When he was little. And I would say, Antosha, it's just because nothing is easy in this life. If you want to get those toys, if you want to have food, good food, and if you want to read books, if everything costs, and we never spoke about money, but we only was saying to him, that's what you're getting when you work hard, when you have a discipline, when you have to, we get up early, and he was staying with babysitter when we start teaching ice skating after we were done with the show. So he actually got to know you need to work in order to succeed. And especially if you love something, you need to work harder. And so, other than that, he was a very happy child. He started crying when he started going for auditions and not getting the role, and he would say, and I told him, if you're gonna cry, then we better not to do it, because I loved when you smile, baby.
So, yeah. A good segue, actually, just to talk about the cystic fibrosis, which I don't think many people knew about. I certainly didn't know about until seeing this film. And even before he learned of it at age 18 or so, the fact that, as we see at the crawl at the end, 69 films, never a day calling in sick, never missed a day of work, the love and dedication he had to his craft, obviously before he even knew about his diagnosis and after, he never let anything slow him down. That working hard, Irina, that you're talking about, was always there. Nothing would let him slow down, would it? Including the CF.
Never. And what surprised me, actually, because cystic fibrosis is one of the characteristics of this disease, that people has to cough to just clean up the airways. And Antosha was coughing very often and a lot, but when it was take on the movie, never. Wow. And I don't know how he did that. Yeah. Never, ever. Oh, runs and everything, but never anything like the CF never like limit his work ability.
Yeah, we see him run so often on the Star Trek sets here, and he's going at a breakneck pace. It's
Drake knew him for years and worked with him, and
Never
he found it the same day I did when we saw it that first time.
That's amazing. This is a note on the Star Trek role too, which is also so important and so iconic. I love that he said to you guys, "I need his grandfather's accent rather than the accent that he heard at home." He knew that there was something else that he needed there, right?
I think the most important that Walter Koenig loved.
Yeah, right.
And that is important.
Yeah. But it just shows that he was looking at everything and processing it all and taking it all from various places. Yeah. If anybody we have time for maybe one more question. Yes.
I'm just curious, your relationship with your son was so obviously open, and you gave him such an amazing foundation, and it was so special. And I'm wondering if through this film and the interviews and everything that you saw, if you learned something about him that you didn't know.
Question is, did you learn anything about Anton that you didn't know through the film, through watching the film, working with Garret on the film? Anything about Anton that you didn't know that you learned through the movie?
Do you want to know about Foundation a little bit more?
The foundation of your relationship was so strong and open, and clearly there was such love there, but I'm wondering if through the interviews that you saw and such, if you learned anything about your son that you didn't know before.
Maybe
all of the stories from Anton.
in first hand, yeah.
He never hid anything. That was our rule in the house from the young age. Don't lie to me, baby. I'm going to look in your eyes and I would know. Because Tolstoy said their eyes is the mirror for your soul. and he believed in it for a long time. and I was tricking him then till some point, and then I said, Antosha, you know, no, our relationship was built on saying to each other the truth, asking questions if you need to know the answer, and he truly said he was just like so open with everything what he going through, with the growth, dating and things, and I told him when he was young, very, very young, that everything is beautiful, just if you need to share, share. So we didn't learn anything from this. It was nothing to learn.
I learned a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot off that actually and just maybe ask Garret and Drake if there was a bit of film that was like a holy grail that when you found it you said, oh, this is a perfect bridge from this to this, or this was something we didn't know about Anton, that moment where he's talking about like, you know, that he thought cinema was this and kind of grappling with some of those philosophical ideas.
Oh, I mean, I just think, I mean, I knew all about the sex club stuff and the photography, obviously, but I was just surprised and excited to know that everybody knew about that he worked with. So that section's my favorite section of the film because it's such an exploration. It's you know, I think Simon Pegg says it best that he envied his naughtiness. I mean, it's like he was so curious. He could explore things that I think other people would be afraid to. And I think it opened up an interest in sexuality and so many of his friends and so many of his colleagues that was just so cool. I think it was just so special.
I mean, for me, I instantly latched on to the letters that he wrote his parents. And like that's, again, I think it's just, maybe it's something I could relate to, being a parent myself. I know I keep bringing that up. And it also created this framing device I could use to really carry me through the film. And you know, it was really important to me and all of us to tell this story from Anton's point of view as much as possible. I think it's really important in these types of films to do that. It's his story to tell, not really mine. I'm there to help. And those letters are the window into him. And that, we built it out. I built it out with these, and I asked Irina, I said, I need somebody to read these. I don't want them to be Anton. I need someone to read his words that had an emotional connection to him that we have not interviewed yet in the film. They could bring gravitas. And she goes, Nick Cage. I was like, that's the last person I thought. Yeah. But the more me and Drake just started talking about it, and we're like, you know what? They're kind of kindred spirits. And Anton loved him as an actor. Respected him so much. So we reach out to Nick. 2 weeks, and within like a day, he's like, I'm in. Yeah. And he's like, come to Las Vegas to record. And we're like, oh, okay. This is how it begins. Yeah. And I sent him, basically in script form, all the letters, thinking he'll read this once, and then he'll come and read it again to record. He comes to the studio where we record, memorized everything. Wow. I mean, first letter he starts reading, he breaks down in tears. And I mean, Drake and I were just like.
Well, he said, this is just so important.
Yeah.
And he realized it before, but it hit him in that moment how important this was, this story, and to tell this story.
Yeah.
I just want to add something I didn't say correctly. I never heard when Anton was gone and we were looking, his friends from Hammerheads, Dave Glavatsky, he was listening all of the songs of Anton. He found this 2 songs which I never heard, and that was Mama, I Play the Blues for You. I understood when he was doing it. It was in Albuquerque when he was shooting Fright Night, and just by seeing his hair, the length of his hair, I never heard that song. And then also The Sun Is Shining Below Me. I never heard, he never shared that. The first one probably because he came for my birthday and he decided not to play that for me. Mama, I Play the Blues, but that song, The Sun Is Shining Below Me, that probably was one of his last songs. And I think he didn't ever share that because I would be very frightened by listening these words. So I never heard. That's what I've learned while we were doing the film.
Yeah.
And Viktor, you mentioned it just a couple of minutes ago. Let's talk about the Anton Yelchin Foundation and what it does and what the foundation goals are and what its purposes are with the community.
Okay, so our mission to empower the young people engaged in creative arts who suffering from debilitating disease and disability. We were set up the foundation 2016 and the end of 2016, and 2017, 2018, we already did the grant for, we're doing 3 grants a year for very talented, very young people who really like suffering her life. I don't want to talk about it, but believe me, it was like touching to read their stories. Beside that, our foundation donated $1 million to USC Medical Center Clinic of Cystic Fibrosis, and it was named by Anton, so right now it's called Anton Yelchin Cystic Fibrosis Clinic.
And I'm going to end with just this comment here from someone. They just say that they wanted to say to you, Viktor and Irina, that your son is one of the reasons why they are an actor today. And I just want to make sure that that gets passed along, because I think there's a lot of influence that Anton continues to have.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for being here. Congratulations on the film. And Irina and Viktor, thank you for sharing your intimate moments, and thank you for sharing Anton with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Garret Price, Drake Doremus, Evie Kaufman, Viktor Yelchin, and Irina Korina. The film is Love Antosha. Thank you so much.